Alright, well, sorry it's been so long since I put up my last video. Um, yeah, it's just, I've been busy with schoolwork and sort of, it slips my mind when I realize how long it's been. And I know a lot of you will be picking out schools and the deadlines to submit those deposits are, I guess, around early April usually. So I wanted to put up a video, maybe something that could help you along in making that decision. A lot of people have been asking me about law school rankings and what do they mean, how can you use them, how should you use them, uh, you know how do employers look at these versus how do students look at these. So I figured I would answer some of those questions, at least from my perspective. I can't say definitively how everyone is going to assess and use those rankings, but I can just give you some a general picture from my experiences so far with regard to the rankings and how they're applied. So what I sort of did was make a list of the things that are useful or important about the rankings, things, the positives and the ways in which we can actually use it for a good cause. And then I also list out a few of the things that make the rankings misleading and the things that make it so you shouldn't put that much weight into them, or at least as not much as you would think you should put into them. So it's just some countervailing factors to consider on both sides. So let's start with the things that are useful, the things that make the rankings perhaps at least somewhat positive. So in general, the rankings give you, as I said, general picture of the reputation and the prestige of a school. Now, by that, you have the top national schools at the top of the rankings that are always up there. You have some really good regional schools beyond that, and then you start getting to some more localized schools as you go down the list. And again, you don't want to go by number to number and say, oh, number 15 is better than 16 and 16 is better than 17. No, it gives you a general picture. You just look at sort of where is a school located in the rankings generally. You would say, oh, is it in the top 50? Is it somewhere between 50 and 100? Is it between 100 and 150? Those are all sort of different zones of prestige and reputation of the schools. And employers will know that. They'll know if a school is, among the top 20, most national schools, or the best regional schools, or if a school is a much more localized school. And in general, these rankings roughly correlate with the employment prospects that you'd have at the various schools. The top national schools, of course, are going to place the most students into the best firms, and the further you go down the list, you're going to have worse and worse employment prospects. That's just sort of the way it works. Um, Again, it's not that the list goes from best to worst, but the schools toward the bottom of the list, as a general matter, are not going to have very good employment prospects relative to the schools higher up in the rankings. And also, with regard to how employers use the rankings, again, they don't keep. I wouldn't, at least in my experience, they don't keep tabs on it year to year and say, okay, I know this school is, 21, and I know this school is 57. They just have a general idea of the reputation of the schools. They'll know if the school is, a tier one, good reputation school, or if it's a third tier school that they're maybe not comfortable recruiting from. And that also speaks to the fact that they sometimes will, base a lot of their recruiting practices on the ranking of the school. If they know that the school does not have a good reputation and that's reflected in the rankings, they might not want to recruit there. Whereas if they see a school is ranked very high, they might use that as an indication that they should do some more recruiting there. So employers will use those rankings, at least in a general sense, and that's the way I would recommend that you use them, more of in a generalized sense as opposed to specifically looking toward the numerical ranking of the given schools. And then, of course, a few of the things that make it a little bit more misleading is that you shouldn't use it to make really fine distinctions. Like I said, number 80 is not necessarily a better school than number 90, and 100 is not necessarily better than 105. You want to sort of look at the generalized regions. Don't draw fine distinctions that really aren't there. If a school drops 2 spots from 70 to 72, I mean, that's not a big deal, and that's not something that's going to manifest itself in employment and in recruiting or in the experience that you have at the school. So, and that's the area where people start to look into it too much. They say, "Oh, I have to go to the highest ranked school," even if they're picking 65 over 70. The ranking at that point should not be what makes you decide between those two schools. So don't draw fine distinctions, throughout the majority of this list. Of course, there's a difference between a third-tier school and a top 50 school, but don't think that there's differences between schools ranked back to back to each other like that, or even close by in the rankings. Also, aside from, people have this mindset often of saying, I just want to go to the best school I can get into. They just look at the rankings, pick the top school they got into, and, just let that be the decision maker. I think a smarter thing to do, if you're not going to one of the top national schools, one of those top 20 schools or so, more important than the ranking of the school is going to be the geography of the school. Because if it's not a national school, that means it's more of a localized regional school. And usually in those localized places, let's say you're from North Carolina, and you have a chance to go to school in North Carolina, but there's a school ranked 5 higher in the rankings that you got into that's located in Texas. Again, I don't know, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, but it's probably better to go to the school in North Carolina if you want to work and stay in North Carolina, because the familiarity with the school is going to be a lot higher than the Texas school. The people in North Carolina won't care that the Texas one is ranked 5 higher, because they would rather hire students from the more localized regional school that places a lot more graduates in their state. So just as a generalized rule, I think it's a really important thing to consider is the geography of the school, and let that be more important than the ranking, assuming that you're not looking at these top national schools in which the ranking itself can get you placed in any state, regardless of the familiarity they have, because they'll all be familiar with the top national schools. I mean, if you went to, you go to Duke or Northwestern or Cornell or something like that, people are going to know about it in many places outside of the areas where those schools are located. So even if you are from North Carolina and you go up to Cornell, you'll probably be able to get a job back home in North Carolina. But again, if you're looking at a school ranked just a few spots higher that's in Florida or in Texas, it likely would not be smart to leave the place that you want to work just for a few spots up in the rankings. And another point is that these rankings, the schools know how much weight students place on these rankings, so of course their incentive is to get the ranking up as high as possible. So it gives them some almost like an incentive to game and manipulate the rankings as much as they possibly can. And some schools have been essentially caught in the act. I mean, University of Illinois and Villanova, University of Illinois, I remember reading that they were artificially inflating the LSAT scores that students were reporting, because that factors into the rankings. And that came out this past year, and look what happened to them in the rankings. It's just dropped straight down because they had that incentive to want to get the ranking up as high as possible. Villanova, I believe they said that they were, I don't remember exactly what was going on there, but something was being falsified, and they really paid the price for it. They dropped out of the top 100 and are now considered a third-tier school, at least if you want to go specifically on the rankings. So the schools have an incentive to bump themselves up. So again, this is why I'm saying that you shouldn't make these fine distinctions between schools, because you never know if a school should really be ranked 80 versus 85, or so it's ridiculous to say that one is better than the other just because it's a few spots higher in the rankings, because we don't know how these schools are trying to manipulate and game the rankings. So that's just a general picture of how I would use the rankings and how I think you should apply them. They're important. They're sort of a fact of life with regard to picking schools and how employers look at schools. It's not something that's really going to just go away as much as we would like them to. But at the same time, don't put too much focus on it, or else you're going to lead yourself to make some poor decisions that really aren't justified in the long run. So, good luck picking schools. I hope a lot of you have some great choices. If you're interested in learning anything about, if you want to message me anything like the choices that you're making and ask me what I know about the different schools, I'm happy to share that with you. I can't say I'm familiar with everything, but I can give you whatever feedback. I know people in a lot of the top schools, so I can give you whatever information I can come upon or get from them. So yeah, good luck, and I won't be so long before I make the next video. I promise that. All right, take care.